Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources you're curious about, break them down, and really pull out the insights you can actually use.
And today, we're tackling a really big one. It's this belief that holds so many people back, you know?
Absolutely. This idea that, well, if you didn't learn a language as a kid, you've missed the boat, the whole critical period thing.
Exactly. That pervasive myth that basically says your brain turns off its language learning switch around puberty or even earlier for some things like perfect pronunciation.
Right. And look, nobody's denying that things change as we get older. Language learning feels different for adults.
It does. But the research, especially some fascinating large-scale studies, paints a much more nuanced picture, not a hard stop at all.
Like that huge study you mentioned before we started, nearly 700,000 participants.
That's the one. It showed pretty clearly that the ability to get your head around new grammar rules stays, well, pretty strong until you're about 17 or 18.
Okay, so not age 7, more like late teens.
Yeah, and even then, it's a gradual decline, not a sudden drop-off. Now, getting that perfect native-like accent, the studies do suggest starting earlier is better, maybe before 10 or 12, for that real seamless sound.
But for actually learning the language, the grammar, the vocabulary, communication, the window is much, much wider.
Precisely. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're pulling together insights from memory science experts, linguists like Stephen Kirshen, who's foundational here, and methods used by, those polyglots who seem to learn languages for fun.
The goal is to show you how to use the adult brain's unique strengths. Because here's the kicker. Adults don't just have to learn differently. They can actually learn faster than kids sometimes.
It sounds backwards, doesn't it? But it holds up if you compare apples to apples.
Meaning,
Meaning you can't compare a child immersed 247 in a language environment to an adult doing like an hour a week with a textbook. That's not fair.
right.
But if you give adults and children the same number of focused learning hours, the adults often pull ahead, especially with vocabulary and understanding grammar patterns.
Why? Because we have better learning strategies already built in. We know how to learn.
Exactly. We have mature pattern recognition skills. We understand abstract concepts. We can use logic. Kids are amazing mimics, but adults are amazing analysts if we use the right methods.
So the core question for you listening is this. If you tried learning a language and hit that wall, felt like it was impossible,
That frustration is real.
what was going wrong? And more importantly, what scientifically backed principles can you apply right now to make it work this time?
That's what we're digging into. Forget the myth. Let's talk strategy.
Okay, let's start by giving kids their due. They do have some real advantages, right? We can't just ignore that.
No, absolutely not. Children are incredible social learners. They just dive in. They're not usually worried about making mistakes or sounding silly.
Zero embarrassment factor.
Pretty much zero. That affective filter we'll get into later, it's practically non-existent for young kids in natural settings. They just communicate.
And biologically, there's the ear thing, isn't there?
Oh yeah, that's a huge one early on. A newborn baby's auditory system is basically tuned to perceive any sound distinction used in any human language. It's remarkable.
So they can hear the difference between, say, sounds in Hindi or Zulu that just sound identical to me.
Initially, yes. They can perceive those tiny phonetic differences, the phonemes that signal different meanings in different languages. They're universal listeners.
But that doesn't last, right? It narrows down pretty quickly.
Right. It's a fascinating process of the brain being incredibly efficient. It starts collecting statistics, essentially, which sounds actually matter in the language spoken around them.
And it tunes out the ones that don't seem relevant for communication in their environment.
Exactly. That's why, for instance, many adult Japanese speakers find the English R and L sounds incredibly difficult to distinguish, or why English speakers might struggle with different K sounds in Arabic. That ability to easily perceive non-native sound contrasts starts fading between 6 and 12 months old.
The brain is pruning connections it deems unnecessary, saving resources.
Precisely. Ruthless efficiency. But that pruning creates the first big hurdle for us as adult learners. Our brains are literally wired to ignore some of the crucial sound information in a new language.
Okay, so that's a clear disadvantage. But you're saying adults have their own set of cognitive gifts to compensate.
We absolutely do. While that window for easily picking up a perfect native accent does seem to close relatively early again, maybe aiming for that before age 10 or 12 is best for that specific goal. Adults have other powerful tools.
Like what specifically?
Abstract thought, for one. We understand grammar rules conceptually. We can learn a rule like how to conjugate verbs in the past tense and immediately apply it to hundreds of new verbs we encounter. A young child learns those through massive repetition and exposure, not by understanding the abstract rule.
And pattern spotting, you mentioned that earlier.
Huge. Adults are generally much better at consciously identifying patterns. Whether it's word order, prefixes, suffixes, grammatical structures, we can see the system behind the language more readily.
So we can use that to understand, say, a complex sentence in a story, even if we only know some basic rules.
Yes, a toddler can't do that. They rely on context and simpler structures. We can leverage our analytical skills. And this is why, when you equalize the exposure time and factor in adult motivation and focus strategies.
Adults often learn faster, on average.
On average, yes, faster acquisition of vocabulary and grammatical understanding.
Okay, but then why does the stereotype of the struggling adult learner persist so strongly? Is it just that adults rarely get that equal exposure time? We're busy.
That's a massive part of it. Life gets in the way. But it's also about how adults typically try to learn. We often fall back on inefficient methods we remember from school.
Like rote memorization drills?
Yeah.
Trying to cram vocabulary lists?
Exactly. Passive stuff. Or focusing only on complex grammar rules without enough actual, comprehensible input. A child is immersed in meaningful communication. Adults often aren't, even in a classroom.
So our advantage only kicks in if we're smart about how we learn.
Precisely. And the very first strategic step has to be tackling that sound barrier, because if your brain literally filters out the sounds of a new word,
It's never going to stick. It remains foreign noise.
right, it stays in the irrelevant, forgettable category. You can't memorize what you can't accurately perceive.
So how do we fight back against that early brain pruning? How do we force our ears to, well, reopen to new sounds?
Targeted training. You have to actively work on your auditory perception using what are called minimal pairs.
Minimal pairs. Okay, what are those?
They're pairs of words in the language you're learning that sound very similar, differing by only one single sound, one phoneme. Think ship and sheep in English for a learner whose native language doesn't distinguish those vowel sounds.
Or like you said, the Spanish R sounds, or maybe Paz and Maz.
Exactly. So you find resources apps like Anki have pre-made decks, language learning programs often include this, and you drill yourself. You listen to one of the words in the pair and have to identify which one it was.
Over and over.
Yes. You force your brain to pay attention to that specific sound distinction that it was previously ignoring. By getting it right repeatedly, you literally forge new neural pathways.
You're telling your brain, hey, this difference is meaningful, pay attention.
You got it. It's like recalibrating your auditory system. Once your brain accepts that new sound as distinct and meaningful, words containing that sound suddenly become easier to hear, easier to differentiate in speech, and much, much easier to remember.
It's like tuning an instrument. You're tuning your ears first.
That's a great analogy. First, tune the ears. Then we need to train the mouth, which often feels like a whole different battle.
Oh yeah, trying to make sounds that just don't exist in your native language, it feels physically awkward.
It is physical, and
Yeah.
too many learners, and sometimes even teachers, rely on vague instructions like just listen and repeat, or try to make it sound like this. That's often not enough.
Because you don't actually know what your mouth is supposed to be doing.
Exactly. To get a good accent, or at least clear pronunciation, you need to understand the mechanics. Where is your tongue? How tense are your lips? Are you using your throat differently? It's about conscious control of the physical movements.
Can you give a concrete example of that? Something tricky.
Let's take that French U vowel, the one in words like tu, you, or rue street, or fondue. It notoriously trips up English speakers.
Right, it often comes out sounding like ooh, like to or roo.
Because just imitating doesn't work. The mechanics are specific. You need to hold your lips in a very tight ooh circle, really rounded, almost like you're whistling or saying ooh.
Okay, lips tight and round.
But while holding that lip position, you try to make the sound E, like in the English word see.
Ah, so ooh, lips, E sound inside. That creates tension.
It does. That specific combination of lip rounding and tongue position creates the correct French U sound. Once you understand the physical target, you can practice it deliberately, instead of just vaguely trying to mimic a sound you can't quite replicate.
That makes so much sense. It's like learning a specific muscle movement.
It is. And this disconnect between sound and, well, the physical reality also highlights another big issue, especially in languages like French or English, the gap between spelling and pronunciation.
Oh, definitely. If you try to pronounce French based on how it looks to an English speaker, disaster.
Complete disaster. French is almost like two different languages sometimes. You have the formal written language, very structured, lots of silent letters.
The language of Descartes, as you put it in the outline.
Right. And then you have the spoken language, which flows rapidly, drops sounds, links words together, the language of Descartes. If you pronounce based on the spelling, assuming English sound values, you get things like bonjour instead of the smooth bonjour.
Or pronouncing all those final consonants that are usually silent.
Exactly. And that constant mispronunciation isn't just about having a bad accent. It feeds into that affective filter again. You feel like you sound wrong, you feel like people don't understand you, and that anxiety hinders your learning.
So how does the adult pattern spotting brain tackle this spelling chaos efficiently? We can't memorize the pronunciation of every single word individually.
No, that would be incredibly inefficient. We look for rules of thumb, reliable patterns, take those silent final consonants in French. There's a very useful mnemonic.
A careful rule.
That's the one. Generally, assume a final consonant in French is silent unless it's one of the letters C, R, F, or L. Those four are often pronounced.
And CRFL conveniently spells.
Careful. Be careful to pronounce C, R, F, and L. It's not 100% foolproof. French always has exceptions. But as a general pattern, it covers a huge number of cases.
So you internalize that pattern through practice, using your adult analytical ability.
Yes, you use your pattern recognition skills to find these shortcuts, these efficiencies. That's how adults can fight back against the challenges, by learning smarter, not just harder. Tune the ear, understand the mouth mechanics, spot the pronunciation patterns. That's step one.
Okay, so we've trained our ears to hear the sounds properly, we understand how to physically make them, and we're spotting pronunciation patterns. Now the big one, making it all stick.
Memory.
Ah, yes, the forgetting curve. The bane of every language learner's existence.
We've all been there. You learn a list of words, feel good about it, and then 2 days later, poof, gone. Or at least most of them are.
And the traditional approach, rote repetition, just drilling lists or flashcards over and over, feels like it should work, but it's just painfully inefficient, isn't it?
Incredibly boring. Why is it so bad for long-term memory? Because our brains aren't designed like simple hard drives, just recording whatever data comes in. They're sophisticated filtering systems, constantly deciding what's important enough to keep and what's just noise to be discarded.
In a random foreign word, just a sound paired with an English translation that gets tagged as noise.
Usually, yes. It lacks context, relevance, emotional weight. It falls into the irrelevant and forgettable bin by default. Rote repetition doesn't fundamentally change that irrelevant status for the brain.
So we need strategies that actively mark the information as important, keep this. We need to hack the brain's filtering system.
Exactly. And the science of memory gives us some really powerful principles to do just that. We can think of maybe 5 core ideas here.
Okay, lay them on us. Principle number 1.
Principle 1, make memories more memorable. We need to deliberately make the information richer, deeper, more connected.
This relates to that levels of processing idea, right?
Yeah.
Moving beyond just the surface features of a word.
Precisely. Hearing the sound and seeing the English word is shallow processing. Thinking about the concept it represents, what does dog actually mean? Furry, barks, walks, that's deeper, semantic processing.
But the deepest level, the one that really anchors memory.
Is personal connection. Linking the new information to your own life, your own experiences, your own emotions.
Can you give an example? Maybe with a tricky word.
Sure, let's use that Bass example from the outline. Urtpetet's, it means birthday. Just repeating Urtpetet's birthday is shallow.
Right, forgettable.
Thinking about birthdays in general, cake, parties, presents, that's semantic, better, but making it personal. Maybe you link Urtpetet's to a vivid memory of your 10th birthday party, the one where your ridiculous cat knocked over the cake.
Ah, so you create a unique, slightly weird personal image or story around the word.
Exactly. That specific personal, maybe even emotional link flags it for your brain as important. Our sources suggest that adding this personal connection makes information about 50% easier to recall. It's not just data anymore, it's part of your story. That word becomes practically unforgettable.
Okay, make it personal. Deep processing.
Got it.
Principle number 2.
Principle 2, maximize laziness. Which sounds terrible, but it's really about efficiency.
Haha, okay, intrigued. How is being lazy good for memory?
It's about knowing when to stop, Research clearly shows that once you've successfully recalled a piece of information once from memory without looking,
Uh-huh.
continuing to drill it right then and there in that same session gives you very little extra benefit for long-term retention. You hit diminishing returns incredibly fast.
So the moment I get the flashcard right, I should just stop,
Yeah.
put away.
Yes. Acknowledge the success. Maybe feel that little rush of, I got it, and move on to the next card or the next task. Be lazy, or rather be efficient. That extra time is much better spent creating more personal connections for other words or getting ready for the next principle.
Don't waste time overlearning in the short term. Okay, I like that. Principle 3.
Principle 3, don't review, recall. This is absolutely crucial and flips the common practice of passive review on its head.
What's the difference? Reviewing sounds like what you should do.
Passive review is just looking at the answer, seeing the word and its translation, or the question and the answer and thinking, yeah, I know that. But that doesn't actually strengthen your ability to retrieve the information when you need it later.
So what's active recall?
Active recall is forcing your brain to produce the answer from scratch, like looking at the English word birthday and having to actively search your memory for erudibitets without any cues, or covering the answer on a flashcard. The blank sheet of paper test is another way to think about it. Can you write down everything you know about a topic without looking at your notes?
That definitely feels harder, more effortful.
It is. And that effort is exactly what makes it so effective. Because when you struggle for a moment, that tip of the tongue feeling, and then you finally retrieve the word.
Yeah. What happens to the brain then?
Boom! Your brain rewards that successful retrieval effort with the little squirt of neurochemicals, especially dopamine, right into the memory centers like the hippocampus.
Dopamine, like the reward chemical.
Exactly. It's like your brain is saying, yes, that was important. Let's make that connection stronger so we can find it easier next time. It creates, as one source colorfully put it, a drug-fueled memory party in your brain.
I love that. So the struggle and successful recall chemically reinforces the memory trace.
Powerfully so. It makes that successful recall pathway much more robust and resistant to forgetting. Passive review doesn't give you that chemical boost active recall does.
Okay, active recall. Got it. Principle 4.
Principle 4, rewrite the past. This one taps into how malleable and associative our memory actually is.
Malleable, how? You mean we can kind of implant memories?
To some extent, yes. Memory isn't like a video recording, it's reconstructive. Think about those studies where people developed vivid, detailed memories of events that never actually happened just through suggestion or seeing doctored photos. Or remembering the taste of a specific popcorn they never tried just because the advertising was effective.
Wow. Okay, so memory is kind of suggestible. How do we use that for language learning?
We use it deliberately when we create those mnemonic images we talked about, especially for things like grammar rules or gender. We intentionally create strong, maybe weird or exaggerated associations right from the start. We're essentially telling our brain how to connect these pieces of information in a memorable way, taking advantage of its natural tendency to link things together, even if the initial link is completely artificial.
So we're consciously wiring those connections from day one using vivid imagery.
Exactly. We're rewriting the past of that word in our memory to include a strong, unforgettable hook.
Fascinating. Okay, and the final piece of the memory puzzle, Principle 5.
Principle 5, timing is everything. This is where we beat the forgetting curve long term.
This sounds like space repetition systems, or SRS.
Precisely. We know that memories naturally decay over time if they're not reinforced. The core idea of SRS is to interrupt that decay at the optimal moment.
And the optimal moment is?
Just before you're about to forget it. If you review too soon, when the memory is still strong, it's inefficient. Remember the laziness principle. If you wait too long, you've already forgotten it and have to basically relearn it from scratch.
So you want to hit that sweet spot where it's challenging to recall, but still possible.
Exactly. That's where active recall has the biggest strengthening effect. And SRS software, like Anki or others built into language apps, uses algorithms to predict that optimal moment for each individual piece of information based on your past performance.
How does that work in practice?
You review a flashcard. If you get it right easily, the software schedules the next review much further out, maybe in several days or weeks or even months. If you struggle, but eventually get it right, it might show it to you again sooner, perhaps the next day. If you get it wrong, it brings it back very soon, maybe in the same session or a few minutes later.
So it adapts the review schedule for every single word or fact based on how well I know it.
Yes, it personalizes the timing. And the intervals get progressively longer. You might see a new word today, then tomorrow, then in 3 days, then a week, then 3 weeks, then 2 months, then 6 months.
And there's an ideal timing for long-term retention.
Research suggests that for really embedding something for, say, 6 months, the ideal time for a single successful review session is after a delay of about 28 days, assuming you knew it reasonably well before that.
Yeah.
The SRS aims to hit intervals like that naturally through its scheduling.
Wow. So combining deep processing, personal connection, active recall, and timed repetition.
This. You create a system that works with your brain's natural memory mechanisms instead of fighting against them. It's the most efficient way known to science to memorize large amounts of information, like vocabulary, and keep it accessible long term. It effectively ends forgetting, if you stick with it.
All right, we've got strategies for hearing the sounds, and making the words stick in our memory using some pretty cool science. But language isn't just lists of words, right? It's communication. It's understanding messages.
Exactly. Memorizing words is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You need to be able to use them, understand them in context. And this brings us to what is arguably the most important concept in second language acquisition theory, comprehensible input, or CI.
This is Stephen Krashen's big idea, isn't it?
It is. Krashen's theories have been hugely influential, and CI is at the core. The basic idea is simple but profound. We acquire language when we understand messages.
Understand messages, not when we study grammar rules.
Not primarily, according to Krashen. He proposed that the input we receive needs to be slightly above our current level of competence. He famously formulated this as I plus 1.
A being our current level, and plus 1 being that little bit of challenge.
Precisely. The input needs to contain liquid structures or vocabulary that we haven't quite mastered yet, but the overall message must still be comprehensible. We need to be able to figure out the meaning using context or knowledge of the world, visual aids, gestures, whatever it takes.
So it's not about understanding every single word, but getting the gist.
Getting the gist is key. If the input is comprehensible, Krashen argues, the necessary grammar and vocabulary needed for acquisition are provided automatically. You absorb the structure subconsciously as you focus on the meaning.
This leads to his famous distinction between acquisition and learning, right? Can you break that down?
Sure. Acquisition, in Krashen's model, is the subconscious process. It's like how children pick up their first language. It feels natural, effortless. You're not consciously aware of the rules you're internalizing. You're just focused on understanding and communicating. This is the goal.
And learning.
Learning is the conscious process. It's knowing about a language, studying grammar rules in a textbook, memorizing verb conjugations, explicitly learning about syntax. This is what happens in most traditional language classrooms.
And Krashen's big claim is that learning can't turn into acquisition. Studying rules doesn't lead to fluent natural use.
That's his hypothesis, yes. He argues that learned knowledge can only be used as a monitor, an editor.
An editor?
Yeah, something we use to consciously check and correct our output after we've already formulated it using our acquired system. So it can help us polish our writing or speech, catch errors, but it's not the source of our fluency or our intuitive sense of what sounds right.
So the engine driving fluency is always subconscious acquisition, fueled by massive amounts of comprehensible input.
That's the core of the theory. And interestingly, Krashen also suggested that the best input isn't one that deliberately tries to target a specific A+1 structure like having a grammar point of the day.
Oh, why not?
Because, he argued, if the communication is genuine, interesting, and roughly tuned to the learner's level, the +1 element will happen naturally and automatically. Focusing too much on specific forms can take the focus away from meaning, which is the driver of acquisition.
Makes sense. Focus on the message, not the grammar point.
Right. But there's a huge barrier that can stop even perfectly comprehensible input from actually reaching the language acquisition parts of the brain, especially for adults.
Let me guess. This is where the affective filter comes in.
You got it. The affective filter is Krashen's concept for the emotional barrier to acquisition. It includes things like anxiety, motivation, self-confidence, stress.
And adults tend to have these in spades when learning a language, don't we?
We really do. We worry about making mistakes, sounding stupid, being judged. We might feel pressure to perform, or maybe we lack confidence from past failures. All these negative emotions raise the affective filter.
And what happens when the filter is high?
Even if the input is perfectly comprehensible, you understand the message intellectually, a high filter acts like a block. The input doesn't get through to the language acquisition device, as Krashen termed it, borrowing from Chomsky. The emotional state prevents the subconscious processing needed for acquisition.
So feeling stressed or anxious literally stops you from learning, even if you understand what's being said.
That's the hypothesis. Conversely, when the filter is low, when you're relaxed, motivated, interested, confident, the input flows freely and acquisition can happen efficiently.
This sounds like why kids often do so well. Low filter.
Exactly. They're typically less anxious, more willing to play with the language, less self-critical.
Mm.
So a huge part of successful adult learning is consciously finding ways to lower that effective filter.
Okay, so we need activities that provide lots of CI and keep the filter low. What does that look like in practice? What are the best input-based activities?
Well, the absolute cornerstone, according to Krashen and many others, is free voluntary reading, or FVR.
Just reading.
For fun. Pretty much, yes. But with two crucial conditions. First, it has to be voluntary and enjoyable. You need to be reading something you actually find interesting, something you want to read, that keeps motivation high and the filter low.
And the second condition?
It has to be at the right level. This is critical for comprehensibility. The general guideline, often cited, is the 98% rule, or sometimes the rule of thumb you should understand, about 98% of the words on the page.
Meaning no more than, say, one or two unfamiliar words per 100.
Exactly. If you're constantly stopping to look up words, it breaks the flow, becomes frustrating, the input stops being easily comprehensible, and your effective filter shoots up. You're back to studying instead of acquiring.
So find books or articles that are easy enough to read smoothly and enjoyably. Graded readers, maybe? Children's books to start?
Absolutely. Graded readers are specifically designed for this. Simple novels, news articles for learners, even comics or magazines. The key is high volume, comprehensible, enjoyable reading. Krashen argues this is the single most powerful tool for vocabulary growth and developing a feel for grammar.
What about leveraging stories we already know?
That's another fantastic strategy. Using familiar stories. Find a translation of a book you loved in your native language, or read the novelization of a movie you've seen multiple times.
Why does that work so well?
Because you already know the plot, the characters, the context. That provides a massive scaffold for comprehension. Even if you encounter unfamiliar words or complex sentences, you can usually figure them out because you know what's supposed to be happening.
Keeps the CI high and the filter low because there's less uncertainty?
Precisely. And a great tip here is to combine reading the familiar story with listening to the audiobook version simultaneously.
Ah, so you get the sound and the text together.
Yes. It helps you link the written form to the spoken rhythm and pronunciation, improving both reading and listening skills, and it really helps maintain momentum. You could easily rack up 15-20 hours or more of high-quality CI this way with just one book or movie adaptation.
Speaking of listening, you mentioned earlier about subtitles. Bad idea.
Generally, yes, if your goal is to improve listening comprehension, avoid subtitles in the language you're learning, and definitely avoid them in your native language.
Why? They feel helpful.
They feel helpful, but reading is almost always easier and faster than processing audio. So your brain takes the path of least resistance, it reads the subtitles, and pays less attention to the actual sounds. Your listening skills don't get the workout they need.
So turn them off even if it feels hard at first.
Yes, it forces your ears to do the work. Maybe start with material where you have strong visual context, like cartoons or familiar movies, to help with comprehension without relying on text.
Okay, what about more interactive, maybe lower tech CI activities, especially for beginners?
A great one is listen and draw. It's super simple. The teacher or a partner reads a description or tells a simple story, and the learners just draw what they hear. There's no pressure to speak, just to understand. The drawing itself becomes proof of comprehension. It focuses entirely on processing the input and making meaning.
And that works even if the person reading isn't a super proficient speaker themselves.
Absolutely. They could just be reading a prepared text aloud. The focus is on the learner's comprehension.
Cool. And for tackling really dense, difficult texts later on, like academic articles.
A technique called jigsaw reading can be very effective. You break a challenging text into smaller, manageable chunks.
Okay.
Divide the class or study group into small home groups. Each person in the group gets a different chunk of the text. Then, everyone who has the same chunk, say paragraph 1, gets together in an expert group.
So all the paragraph 1 people meet up.
Right. They discuss their paragraph together, making sure they fully understand it, maybe look up key vocabulary. They become the experts on that section.
Then what?
Then everyone returns to their original home group. where each member is now an expert on a different part of the text. They take turns teaching their section to the rest of their group.
Ah, so they pool their knowledge to understand the whole text.
Exactly. It breaks down a potentially overwhelming task into manageable pieces, ensures deep processing through discussion and teaching, and provides CI through both reading and listening to peers. It lowers the filter by making it collaborative. Okay, we've covered the importance of input, how to make it comprehensible, how to keep the effective filter low, and how to make vocabulary stick using memory science. Now let's talk about putting it all together, building your own personalized toolkit for reaching fluency.
Because just knowing the theory isn't enough.
Yeah.
You need the practical tools and strategies.
Yeah.
And personalization seems key here.
It really is. This starts right back with those memory techniques, specifically with flashcards. We talked about SRS, but how you make the cards matters immensely. This is about the power of the creative process. DIY deck building.
DIY. So making your own flashcards is better than buying pre-made ones, even fancy ones with pictures.
Generally, yes, much better. Think about it, a ready-made deck is someone else's choices, someone else's connections. Your brain didn't go through the process of selecting the word, finding the image, thinking about the meaning in context.
So it feels less relevant,
Yeah.
less ownership.
Exactly. You're kind of fighting your own mental filters that say, this isn't mine. But when you choose the word, maybe one you just encountered in your reading, you find the perfect picture or draw a silly doodle, you craft that personal connection or mnemonic.
You're already deeply processing it during the creation stage.
Precisely. The act of making the card is a powerful first step in encoding the memory. You're sidestepping those filters because it's your creation.
And the advice is to avoid using English translations on the cards.
As much as possible, yes. For concrete nouns like dog, house, tree, use a picture. Your brain links the foreign word directly to the concept via the image. For more abstract concepts, like freedom or because, maybe use a simple definition in the target language or a simple example sentence using the word.
So you stay within the target language as much as you can.
It helps build those direct connections, bypassing the translation step, which can slow down processing during real communication.
Okay, DIY picture definition cards for vocabulary. Now, what about grammar? That often feels like the biggest hurdle. How do we build a grammatical memory toolkit?
Grammar definitely requires some specific tactics. Rote memorization of rules is rarely effective for fluent production. We need to internalize the patterns.
Especially tricky things like grammatical gender in languages like French, German, Spanish. How do you remember if table is masculine or feminine?
This is where those mnemonic imagery for gender techniques come in. Relying on pure memorization for gender is exhausting and prone to errors. You need a more robust system.
Using those vivid, maybe even weird or vulgar images we touched on earlier.
Exactly, because strong, unusual images stick in memory. So you assign a consistent vivid image or action to each gender in the language. For example, in German, you might decide that all masculine nouns, their words, are constantly exploding.
Exploding.
Yeah, so der Baum, the tree. You vividly imagine a tree exploding, kaboom, splinters of wood flying everywhere, their tisch, the table, exploding table. It's bizarre, but that consistency links the concept of masculine to that image.
Okay. And for feminine,
Yeah.
the words, or neuter, das words.
You pick different, equally vivid, consistent themes. Maybe all feminine nouns are melting or perhaps wrapped in luxurious silk. Maybe all neuter nouns are made of glass and constantly shattering. The specific image doesn't matter as much as its vividness and its consistent application to that gender class.
So when you learn a new noun, you immediately create that gendered image for it.
Yes. Tree, masculine, boom. Flower, feminine in French, la fleur, melting petals. It sounds silly, but it anchors the gender much more effectively than just trying to remember der or la.
That's a cool hack. But before we get to gender and complex rules, we need the basics, right?
Absolutely critical. Frequency first. Don't try to learn obscure vocabulary or complex grammar before you have a solid foundation. Focus intensely on mastering the most common words first.
How many are we talking about?
Sources often suggest aiming for the top 600, 700 words initially. These tend to be simple, concrete words, nouns, verbs, adjectives, prepositions that are easy to visualize and form the backbone of everyday communication.
Like go, see, house, man, big, good, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They are the high-frequency building blocks. Once you have those, you can understand a surprisingly large percentage of normal conversation or text, and they provide the framework for figuring out more complex stuff later.
And you mentioned earlier, we can actually use grammar books in a smarter way, not just for reading rules.
Yes. Learning grammar as a game. Instead of just reading explanations, treat the grammar book primarily as a source of high-quality example sentences.
Why the examples?
Because example sentences show the grammar in action, in context. They are usually correct, natural-sounding snippets of the language illustrating the rule. So you take those sentences and you mine them for new vocabulary, new verb forms, interesting word orders. Turn those components into your DIY flashcards using SRS.
So you're learning the pattern from the examples, not just the abstract rule.
Right. And the game part is to try and master the content of a chapter, the vocabulary, the patterns in the examples using your flashcards before you formally read the grammar explanation in the book. You can essentially race the grammar book.
Huh. I like that. So you internalize the pattern through spaced repetition of real examples first.
Yes. By the time you read the rule, it often just confirms what you've already started to acquire subconsciously. It flips the traditional learning script.
Okay, input, memory, grammar hacks. We focused heavily on input based on creation, but what about the power of output, speaking and writing? Doesn't that help you learn?
Output plays a vital role, but maybe not in the way most people think. Creation argued that output itself doesn't cause acquisition. You don't learn to speak by speaking, you learn to speak by getting comprehensible input.
So why bother speaking or writing, especially early on?
Because output is the ultimate diagnostic tool. The main goal of producing language, particularly when you're learning, is to make mistakes.
Make mistakes. That sounds counterintuitive.
But your mistakes are incredibly valuable. They show you precisely where the gaps are in your knowledge. What words are you missing? What grammar patterns haven't you internalized yet? Output reveals your weaknesses.
Okay, so I speak or write, I mess up. Then what?
Then you need correction. This is crucial. You need feedback from someone who knows the language, ideally a native speaker or a good teacher.
How do you get that easily?
Online communities are great for writing. Sites like Lang8 or similar platforms let you post text in your target language, and native speakers correct it for free, often in exchange for you correcting their writing in your language. For speaking, finding a tutor on platforms like italki, even for short, focused sessions, can provide invaluable feedback.
And that corrected text or speech?
Becomes highly personalized, highly relevant, comprehensible input for you. It's based on your own thoughts, your own errors. Your brain pays close attention to that kind of feedback. It's arguably the best input you can get.
So output leads to feedback, which becomes high-quality input. That makes sense. What about those moments in conversation when you just freeze, you can't find the word?
The dreaded blank. This is where a strategy sometimes called the language taboo comes in handy.
Language taboo. What's that?
It means when you're speaking in your target language and you can't think of a specific word, say screwdriver, you make it taboo to switch back to English or just give up. You must find a way to express the concept using the language you do know.
So you have to talk around it, circumlocute.
Exactly. You might say, the tool you use for turning those little metal things, screws, or it has a handle at a metal point. You use gestures, definitions, simpler words.
That sounds hard.
It is hard, but it's incredible practice. It forces you to be creative within the target language, to activate the vocabulary and grammar you've already acquired. It pushes you towards fluency by making you solve communication problems in real time, relying only on your target language resources. It's a huge leap.
Okay, these are great strategies, but they all seem to require time. And time is the biggest constraint for most adults. How do we actually fit this in?
This is where recognizing and mobilizing your hidden moments is crucial. We all have small pockets of downtime during the day that usually get wasted.
Like waiting for the bus or in line for coffee.
Exactly. Waiting for the elevator, sitting at a red light, if safe, the few minutes before a meeting starts while the kettle boils. These little scraps of time add up.
And you can use them for
Micro-study. Pull out your SRS app on your phone and review just 1 or 2 flashcards. Even 5 seconds of focused, enthusiastic recall on a single card makes a difference.
enthusiastic recall.
Yeah. Make it a mini event in your head. Okay, brain. What's the word for chair? Go.
That little bit of energy helps focus attention. Or maybe listen to a bit of a podcast or audiobook in the target language while commuting or doing chores.
So integrate it into the nooks and crannies of the day.
Yes. Consistency over intensity often wins. Little bits, frequently, build up momentum. Maximize those hidden moments. Use audio during dead time, like cooking or cleaning. Use the 15 minutes before sleep for some relaxing, free, voluntary reading. It's about making it a consistent habit, not necessarily finding huge blocks of study time.
That makes it feel more achievable. Now, one last thing. We've talked tools, techniques. What about just going there? Travel. Immersion.
Beyond the classroom. Absolutely invaluable if you can do it. Immersion programs or just traveling independently provide the ultimate context.
Why is it so powerful? Just the sheer amount of input. That's part of it, yes, you're surrounded by CI. But it's more than that. It lowers the effective filter because communication becomes a genuine necessity, not just an exercise. You often care less about perfect grammar when you just need to find the bathroom or order food.
Survival mode kicks in.
Kind of. And crucially, it connects you to the soul of the language. You learn the cultural nuances, the way people really talk, the things that matter to them. You understand why Italians might get so passionate about coffee, or, as the outline mentioned, why a Neapolitan might wax lyrical about pizza. It's not just food. It's history, family, pride.
You connect the language to the people and the culture.
Exactly. And that provides the deepest level of relevance and motivation for the adult brain. It makes the whole endeavor meaningful beyond just conjugating verbs. It connects the dots. Hashtag outro. So if we bring everything together, the path to successful adult language acquisition really involves a shift in mindset and strategy. It's about, first, acknowledging and leveraging your adult cognitive strengths, that pattern recognition ability.
Right. Using your analytical mind as an asset, not a liability.
Then, embracing the science of memory. Not rote learning, but creating deep personal connections, using active recall, and harnessing the power of spaced repetition systems for efficiency. Ending forgetting.
And making comprehensible input the core engine. Finding ways to get massive amounts of input you can understand and, crucially, enjoy, like free voluntary reading, to keep that effective filter low.
Absolutely. And then using output speaking and writing strategically, not primarily to practice, but to generate mistakes, get targeted feedback, and thus create the most potent, personalized input possible. Using things like the language taboo to push your boundaries.
It's a multifaceted approach, but it sounds way more effective and, frankly, more interesting than traditional methods.
It is. And the benefits, they go way beyond just being able to order croissants in Paris or chat with colleagues overseas. There are profound cognitive and even, soul benefits.
Let's talk about the cognitive ones first, the brain health aspect.
It's really compelling. Consistent research shows that bilingualism, or even just the active process of learning another language, builds cognitive reserve. It makes your brain more resilient.
Resilient to what?
To the effects of aging. Studies consistently find that bilingual individuals show symptoms of dementia and Alzheimer's disease significantly later than monolinguals, even if the underlying brain pathology is similar.
How much later?
The average delay reported in many studies is around 4 to 5 years. That's huge. Learning a language is like a workout for your brain that builds resilience against age-related decline. It's a serious investment in your long-term mental health.
Wow. 5 years delay on dementia onset. That alone seems worth the effort.
It's a powerful motivator. And beyond the brain mechanics, there's just the human element. Learning a language genuinely enriches your life. It opens doors to new perspectives, new ways of thinking, new cultures. You connect with people on a different level. You start to see your own culture and assumptions through fresh eyes. It really does broaden your horizons in a way few other activities can. It's good for the soul, as you said. You discover new sides of yourself, too.
Which leads us perfectly into that final thought, that quote you wanted to share.
Right. It's from the German writer Goethe. And it really resonates with this idea of self-discovery through language, he said. Those who do not know foreign languages know nothing of their own.
Know nothing of their own. That's quite provocative.
It is, isn't it? It suggests that until you've grappled with how another language structures reality, expresses ideas, and codes culture, you can't fully appreciate the unique structure, the assumptions, the hidden philosophy embedded within your own native tongue.
So learning Spanish doesn't just teach you Spanish. It teaches you about English and about language itself.
Precisely. It illuminates your own linguistic world by showing you another one. So our final message to you is, don't let the myth of the critical period hold you back. Recognize your adult advantages. Use these scientifically backed strategies. Embrace the process.
Start your journey. You won't just learn a new way to communicate. You might fundamentally change how you understand yourself and the world.